This is Geek Gab with your host, Dornall and me, Daddy Warpig. Geek Gab. Oh, we are back. Geek Gab for Monday, May 6, 2024. We are off to a great start already. Awesome.
Hit the ground running. Gotta start late, start hard, mess it up. It's okay.
This is not my fault. None of this is my fault. It's all somebody else's fault. And as soon as I figure out who, they will be very severely punished. Exciting things happening today that I can't talk about. The Met Gala is being overrun by activists. I just thought that was hilarious. I wanted to mention that. Protesters are overrunning the Met Gala as we speak.
What are they protesting?
What is everybody protesting, right? The same thing they've been protesting at college campuses. I just thought it was hilarious. It's like, hey, Met Gala people, meet the protesters you support. They're here to protest you. I just No, Helldivers. There was a big controversy in the Helldivers community this week. Sony, geez, where do I start with this? Helldivers 2 was a big hit video game that's we talked about on the show before. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, Sony decided to require every single person who had downloaded and installed the game on Steam to require them to create a PSN network account. Now, this is the same Sony who has infamously been hacked multiple times and leaked personal information from those hacks of PSN accounts. And also, this being on PC, people just didn't want to do it because there's absolutely no benefit to it. So within the span of like a single day, the game went from being overwhelmingly positive to being mixed reviews. They got hundreds of thousands, over 150,000 negative reviews on Steam in one day. One day. And their community managers, whose job it is to deal with the public, responded in of course, a completely calm, measured fashion in order to cool the dime, lying they told people to get stuffed. They told people to get refunds and to piss off. And it turns out, and this is the shocker, it turns out that their community managers were all the Reddit mods from the Helldivers 1 Reddit subreddit. So,
oh boy.
And surprisingly, Reddit mods, not stable people. They got upset and, told everyone to get lost. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, over 100 countries that had bought Helldivers 2 were suddenly banned from buying it again, and if in effect banned from playing the game they had bought, because the PSN PlayStation Network doesn't exist in those countries. So also didn't go over well with the community. It's just the most colossal screw up I have seen in gaming in a long, long time. It's like they shot themselves in the foot. Yeah, foot. That's what I mean. They shot themselves in the air quotes foot. Just massively. And today, like within a day, Sony backed off the PlayStation requirements thing. So congratulations to the Helldiver community for ranting and raving and demanding refunds on Steam that were, some of them were apparently being honored after they'd been playing for, over 50 hours. Someone claimed up to 100 hours. Some of them weren't, but man, people were upset for good reason. You bought a game and all of a sudden you can't play it because of that. And then everybody was like, well, they only said they were going to. And it's like, it's not in the end user license agreement. It was on this tiny little box in Steam, and they weren't enforcing it from the beginning, and they were selling to countries that didn't have PSN. So that doesn't fly. And then there's all these bitter people. This is what I don't understand. Okay, Sony screwed up, shot themselves in the foot, reversed themselves and said, okay, we're not going to require PSN. I don't know if they're going to go back to selling the game in countries where PSN doesn't exist. But what really gets me are all the bitter, angry people who were just like, oh, you PC players, you're just throwing a temper tantrum. And then now that they're won, they're still like bitter and angry about it. It's like, oh, you won. Fine. Whatever. It's like, dude, you're out here simping for like Sony, the hugest, most incompetent corporation in the world. Sony, who is in love with shooting themselves in the foot. They did it with Stellar Blade just recently with the whole censorship thing, which we haven't talked about on the show, but wasn't interesting enough to really talk about. Other than they announced the game as being uncensored, and it was uncensored in most regions, but not the US, because that would offend certain people in the US to have uncensored outfits. And like morally speaking, I'm morally against, really explicit two sexual models, but doing it for the wrong reasons is also important too. And when you announce that you're not going to do it, then all of a sudden have a day one patch after people bought the game, after people pre-ordered the game, a mandatory day one patch that censors what they've purchased, that the only way you could play the game was to have the disc, stick it in, and then not connect to the internet. Okay.
Huh.
Yeah, that's Sony shooting it with Stellar Blade, a huge success. It's like they're begging themselves, and I'm not a console fanboy in the sense that I'm like cheering Sony's fails and cheering Microsoft's successes. I have no idea what the deal with this PS5 is. People are making fun of it for not having any games. I don't know that that's true or not because I'm not really paying attention to it. I pay attention to the Xbox because that's what I've owned, other than owning a PS3 for a while. And so that's what I'm mostly concerned with. I care about the games that are coming out on it. I care about whether they're good or bad. I criticize those games and stuff. It doesn't, if Sony has great games, that's fine. They had Ghost of Tsushima, which was a, console exclusive. I heard that's a fabulous game. Hey, that's great. I'm happy for you. I'm legitimately happy, that they have good games to play. I've heard that PS5 doesn't have a lot of native good games. They're depending on a huge library of like remakes and retreads and re-releases, and that's kind of bad. I think that's bad for gaming as a whole, and I think that's bad for gamers who own a PS5. So I'm not making fun of PS5 owners. I'm not making fun of PC owners, but Sony really is just hurting themselves with moves like this of all of a sudden reversing course, doing what they weren't doing or doing what they explicitly said they weren't going to do, and attacking gamers. It's like, do you not know these are literally the people who give you money? These are where your money comes from. And the monies, they come from the gamers. Should you not want to keep them happy? And this is not unique to Sony. It's common now across comics and movies and people who write science fiction and fantasy novels. It's common everywhere, but it's still insanity to me. It's like people would rather be, and you'll have to pardon the language here, colossal dicks than actually provide customer support. So that's the Helldiver news. Helldivers 2 news. Congratulations to the community.
Wow, and for such a popular game for Sony to do that. Now, looking into it real quick, I'm given to understand that it was someone claimed, as you were trying to say, that it was intended to be a part of the game at first, and they couldn't ship with it with the PSN requirement. Is that true?
It may have been, they've made statements like that, but it was never in the end user license agreement.
Ah,
So when people bought the game, it wasn't a requirement. It wasn't in the EULA when they licensed it. They sold it in countries where they could never have that requirement because PSN doesn't exist in those countries. And then yesterday, they all of a sudden added those countries as a ban, like a blanket ban on selling them, and people couldn't. I mean, for a while there, Sony customer service was so desperate, they were telling people, okay, just lie, just tell them you're in America, it'll let you keep playing. Wink, wink.
well,
Absolutely messed up. So it may have been like required or intended to be there in the Steam version, the PC version, but it wasn't there. And they were selling it to places where it never could have been required because,
right.
so yeah,
That's nuts. That's nuts. Well, that's another big loss for game developers. I don't know what's with these people.
it was highly entertaining to watch though. The chart, and you'll have to find this online, the reviews chart for recent reviews just like falls off a cliff. It's this huge red line that falls off a cliff. And there were a couple of just awesome memes I retweeted about it.
I
I'm
bet it's
sitting
hilarious.
sitting back or watching this. I'm absolutely befuddled. Just amazing. So that's gaming news. But you had some D&D news.
Yeah, in tabletop RPGs. Hey, Bradford Walker, hanging out in the chat. Good to see you. Everybody has to go read his latest stuff on his Substack and his blog. He's good stuff. Um, but what I wanted to talk about is that we got another great interview. People have noticed that the BroSR discussions have m- largely moved on to uh, live streams and shows on YouTube. I'm not sure that's a change for the better, but Jeffro Johnson went on uh, the inaugural stream of one Harmony Ginger. She started a brand new YouTube channel. She's an old board gamer, war gamer, and she got mixed up in the BroSR nonsense, as one does when talking about Dungeons and Dragons on Twitter. The BroSR, they drive the bus. You don't have to like it; you just have to accept it. Um, she had Jeffro Johnson on the show to talk about one-to-one time, the BroSR, Dungeons and Dragons, all this stuff, and she got a great swing dancing lesson while she was at it. I don't have much to say except it was a really good show. It was only an hour long. Great interview, and if you like D&D or RPGs or anything, it's well worth your time to listen to Jeffro. Stop by and tell him thank you, Jeffro, for one-to-one time. I thought it was a really good show, a really good interview. I'm going to put a link in the chat for anybody who's watching on YouTube. That's Harmony Ginger. He really just he lets the role players have it. There's lots of funny stuff that he says in there. Um, Outright calling all role players losers and and obliquely and sometimes directly insulting his guest and everything like that. No, it was a really good show. Um, and the chat was lively as always. So that was nice. I don't really have anything to add to that. Um, my blog is a little out of date. We're doing a lot more mass combats in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Um, so look for that in the coming week for my report on the latest session. With a little help from Macho Mandalf, we did some mass combat scaling up D&D characters to units of 10. Just change the scaling. The rules are exactly the same, Warpig. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons just works. If you just say, well, this figure no longer represents my man, it now represents a unit of 10 soldiers. And he's fighting against 10 orcs. And you just play the game the same way. Really, really cool stuff. If you haven't tried it, try it. I know this is old news for a lot of people that have been playing in all the different Bro SR games, but friendly reminder, Dungeons & Dragons is a war game. And it's Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in particular has all the rules you need to play the war game, in addition to your sort of standard expected dungeon crawling monster fighting.
All right, so I got some oblique D&D news.
What's up?
Do you remember the end of the last show? What I said I was planning on doing?
I do not.
I said I was planning on watching The Continental with Mel Gibson.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't do that.
No.
I said I was planning on watching Shogun, the new Shogun show on I think it's on the FX or what is the FX streaming?
I don't know.
The one that's with Disney now. It's now on Disney. So guess what?
You did not do that.
I didn't do that. And then I had a deep discussion with a guest on our show, and he was telling me how awesome the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare was. And I thought, he's convinced me. We should review that for the show. So I thought, man, I'm going to go review that for the show. Guess what?
I doubt you did that.
I did not do that. And then you went and watched The Fall Guy. And I thought, man, I need to watch The Fall Guy so we can review it on the show today. So I can review it on the show today with you. And I didn't do that either.
You're 0 for 5, Warpig.
So what I have been doing is I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3.
Good game.
So hopefully at some point there'll be some kind of review or something to justify the time I've put into that game, because I think I'm past 40 hours now.
Wow.
In the last week since the last show.
Shame on you. You played a video game instead of watching shows for our benefit.
So, yeah.
We're going to lose all 12 of our subscribers now.
That's why I didn't do any of those things that I'm still sort of planning on doing. Oh, I also thought of a guest that we should have on the show. And I was going to ask them to come on the show.
Did you ask them yet?
I haven't asked them yet. I did not do that.
Okay. I had a feeling that was the case.
I did, however, do some posts on the blog, and people ought to go read our blog, geekgab.com. Links in the description, because I've been talking about some good things, some solid things, so you ought to go check that out. And I had a brief interaction before we get into this, because this leads right into the show. From D&D to the topic of the show. Someone posted today is, hey, the reason why pop culture is better in the distant past is, and then they posted that picture, of the airplane, the bomber with all the bullet holes in it, that they did the study on and said, oh yeah, this is where the plane came back, and, this is where it isn't being shot, and so we need to armor up where it's being shot. And then someone said, no, we need to armor up where it hasn't been shot, because those are the places where they survived. So the people that didn't survive were shot in all those places that aren't on the chart. It's called survivorship bias, right?
Yeah.
So this person pops out and says, no, the reason why pop culture seems better 20 or, whatever in the distant past. I'm guessing 15, 20 years ago is the distant past to this person, is because of survivorship bias. And I'm like, no, that is quite literally cope. Do the work, because I've done the work. Watch mediocre movies, or movies that were considered mediocre at the time, because of what they came out against from the 80s and 90s and 70s, and they're superior to all but a handful of modern movies. Pick a random movie weekend, this is my post from Twitter. Pick a random movie weekend in 1984 and see what was in theaters. I've listened to top 50 songs year by year and top 100 songs decade by decade from 1980 to now. Read books from trashy pulp fiction authors in the 1920s and lauded big pub authors today. And not just big name people. Do what Alex Kursova did and just read some of the pulp magazines, short stories in the pulp magazines. And what he said when he was doing this survey was they're all from decent to great. And these are authors and stories that have been forgotten. All from decent to great compared to what's going on. And then when you look at what's going on today, they're just leave it in the dust. Modern pop culture has gone to the dogs, the forgotten works of even the recent past. And I'm including recent past, those 80s and 90s, not like this person. That's a distant past to them. The 80s is the ancient, forgotten times when Walk the Dinosaur was walking the earth. That's just caveman era. Forgotten works, even the recent past, are innately and obviously superior to today's output. And whole industries are collapsing because they're making crap audiences are refusing to see. And again, I did a post about that. Whole industries collapsing. That's on the blog. Go read the blog for that post. So someone complained and said, no, you're talking about survivorship bias. Don't listen to the top 50. And I'm like, no. I listened to the top 50 of then and now. I compared forgotten movies from then to top 50 now. I compared books from then to top books from now. And this is most important for today's show, these are not things that I have a nostalgic attachment to, because the things I've been reviewing for the show that are old are things that I didn't watch from back then. Things that you would think I would have watched, like Point Break. Point Break, the action movie with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves from the 1980s, I never saw until 4 years ago. I can't have had a nostalgic attachment to that movie because I didn't see it back then. Sorry, in the early 90s. I didn't see it until now. I just reviewed those disaster movies like 3 or 4 episodes ago, or 5 or 6, however long it was. You remember what I was talking about? I didn't watch them back then. I can't have a nostalgic attachment to them. The 2 Raquel Welch movies I reviewed, I either didn't see back then or I don't remember from back then. I can't have a nostalgic attachment to. And Smokey and the Bandit, which we're going to talk about today, I didn't see back then, and I've never seen it until literally this afternoon. Because these things are new to me, I cannot have a nostalgic attachment to them. I've been listening to music that is new to me. I've been watching movies that are new to me. I've been reading books that are new to me and comparing them with modern stuff that is new to me. When I say do the work, I am saying that because I have literally done the work. I'm comparing things that are new to me from then and now. And I'm saying that the stuff from then is intrinsically, categorically, ontologically better. It is superior in every sort of way. Even crappy movies used to have a better grasp on what it means to be human and what a good story is than modern movies. storytelling has gone to the dogs. It's been shot in the head. There are so many arbitrary, crappy little rules that people have to follow now that destroy good stories. And like, just to pick one example, the injunction against damseling, where no man can save a woman. Otherwise, they're a damsel in distress, and that's offensive to feminists. Well, leaving aside the absolutely, colossally, stupidly moronic notion of refusing to tell stories where men are noble and act in noble ways towards women, removing the absolute stupidity of raising a generation of men without any notion of being noble towards women. Just let's set that aside for a minute. If you have an action movie where the woman is beating up men and she can never, ever, 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 ever get help from another man, you have a crappy action movie. Because if you watch an action movie, a buddy cop movie with two men, you'll notice that they save each other all the time because they're buddies. And that's what buddies do. But if one half of them is always doing all the saving and can never be in any danger, what you have is, and I'm going to use a precise technical term, what you have is absolute trash. And so all these people, and that's just one rule, one teeny tiny rule, completely destroys storytelling. And they have volumes of rules. They have the Encyclopedia Britannica of crappy little rules you have to follow to fit into this political ideology, to not be attacked as being homophobic, racist, sexist, age-phobic, transphobic, asexual phobic, whatever. And these rules are being altered all the time, daily. And so when you have replaced your sense of what human beings actually are, when you have replaced any innate wisdom or knowledge with this arbitrary, arcane series of rules, what's going to come out at the other end is heavily digested, heavily focused group, absolutely artificial crap that does not have the ability to move the audience, because on a deep and visceral level, the audience doesn't feel emotions towards it. They're not moved. Fiction works on an implicit and emotional basis, and they've destroyed fiction. They've destroyed it by trying to move to this artificial, abstract, false representation of reality. Let's not forget that it's fake. Women are not. I didn't say this. You didn't hear this. And if anybody says I did, I'll tell them you're lying. Women are not as physically strong as men on the average. Okay? And so you have a movie where a woman effortlessly beats up men who outweigh her by 100 pounds of muscle. It's not going to be as thrilling or as exciting as a big muscular man beating up a bunch of men. Smart movies get around this by having the women fight the women because they're evenly matched. Also, if you have the men beat up the woman and bloody her and beat her down, that's viscerally disturbing to the audience and they're going to dislike your work. So by putting her in genuine peril, you've automatically kind of ruined your story. Shh! Nobody say anything. Didn't say that. So, yes, modern stuff on the whole, and there are exceptions, and I've talked about those exceptions. I've said that there are movies that are modern movies that I've liked, modern movies that are, kind of well done. But even movies that are low budget movies with kind of mediocre action that might be a little bit schlocky are still better than tons of super high budget movies from nowadays because they came from a more honest, more natural, more authentic place. And that's just the facts. However, having said that, I'm entirely willing to be convinced that The Fall Guy is a good movie.
Was that so?
I am willing to be convinced because I want to find good movies. I like movies. I love movies. I love watching movies. I want to watch a good movie. So if this is a good movie, I want to go see it.
Have I got news for you? The Fall Guy, a movie starring Ryan Gosling about a stuntman who becomes a bit of a real life action hero, is a good movie.
Which I would not have guessed from the trailer.
Nope. The trailer highlights a bit of the goofiness between the characters. There is a goofy love story between the main character and the director of the action film, played by Emily Blunt. But The Fall Guy, maybe this is cliche, War Pig, but it's one of those movies that's a love letter to Hollywood or making movies. It's it's a story about a stuntman and all the dangerous stuff that he does. And the plot is, if you have seen the trailer, you understand the plot that the movie star is missing and the stuntman is asked to find out where he is. And he turns out there's a bit of trouble with some violent or criminal elements. And he goes way beyond what his paycheck is and does it basically saves the day by doing incredible stunts. Now I don't remember the television show. My brother loved it. I remember the brown truck and the logo and everything. Lee Majors in it. I don't think has anything to do. It's not faithful to the show at all. But this is what you're going to get, Warpig. You are going to get a PG-13 action film that is chock full, start to finish, with amazing stunt work. They're crashing cars, flipping cars, crashing trucks, fist fighting on a dump truck in the middle of Sydney, and explosions and gunfights, and there's of course a helicopter ride where there's fighting on and around the helicopter. And throughout it, there's, and some might see this as a negative, but there's a very tame romance between the the fall guy Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, and but there's no fan service, there's no cheesy titillation, and the dialogue is a little bit weird at times. Um, they do attempt to play up the humor and the the fall guy's a quirky guy who says strange things sometimes, and that way it's a very modern movie, but it's fun the whole time. I don't know how better to describe it, but you are going to be entertained by uh, by fun action, goofy characters, um, and it's extremely well shot and well shown. Everything's sort of fun and exciting, and there isn't even a hint of all the problems that plague modern movie making. It's a fun movie. It's a great date movie. It's great for I think teenage boys are gonna love this. This is a great one. Kids go out with the boys and go see a movie on a Saturday afternoon or evening. I don't know. On top of everything else, I just thought it was refreshing.
It's a nice change of pain, nice change of pace. Although really nice change of pain probably fits too. It's a nice change of pace for modern movies.
It really is. How do I put this? It's just not often that people will set out and it's played straight, right? The eh,
So they're
in
not
this
making fun of the main character the whole movie.
they're not.
Okay.
I mean some characters get their shots in. Well, I mean the love interest gets her shots in because there's some trouble there in that relationship, right? But no, it's not constantly clowning on the main character, and they don't they no nobody says anything about how amazingly competent he is at real fist fighting, real stunt, driving outside of the confines of a stunt um, stage, right? Without the harnesses and with no nets, right? Nobody comments on that, and it's just taken for granted that this guy is actually pretty great. Um, nobody's putting him down. I mean, other than the bad guys, right? But that's what makes them the bad guys. Uh, no, they don't spend the whole movie cutting down the main character, and they don't do any weird sort of crisis. There's no fake hero's journey. There's no refusing the call or anything like that. Uh, I mean, yeah, at first he's like, I don't know why you're sending me after to find this guy, right? But then the violence starts, and every time something happens to further along the plot, right? He just sort of you know grits his teeth and says, "All right, like I guess I'm gonna have to do this next amazing stunt to rescue a producer or recover a cell phone, the movie star's cell phone or something like that." Uh, it's just, man, it's just fun. I haven't had that much fun at the movies in a long time. And go see it on the movies. Don't wait for it to come home on your stupid, whatever 50-inch TV or whatever. Go to the theater, man. Watch that on the big screen. It's cool. It's fun.
Great. That's really rare. You give a positive review to Mostly anything.
Yeah, and all right, take a step back. Think about it. Like you watch the trailer, and you might remember other movies that play off of old IPs. Stuff like 21 Jump Street. 21 Jump Street was kind of funny, but it was a really dumb movie. Like they're just laughing at the whole thing the whole time, right? This wasn't really like that. This wasn't like that at all. They weren't mocking the concept. Like these people love stuntmen. They love movies and they love action movies. And so um, they just set out to do that. They set out to, hey, okay, so the Fall Guy's a stuntman, right? Well, here's this story. What if we just have all these amazing set piece stunts? And even in the credits, they do a lot of outtakes and watching, the making of some of the stunts. And you can hear one of them say after a particularly impressive scene where they made a car tumble, right? And they count the number of rotations, and someone says, "Oh my God, that's a new world record!" Like these people, they are pushing these stunts to the limit, and it's just cool to watch. And
That's awesome.
for me, it was nice as someone who's not. I'm not like a frame by frame technical sort of movie viewer or I don't usually get into movie reviews in that way. But to go in there and think about the stunts that they were doing is unusual for me, and it actually made the movie more enjoyable.
That's great. I was reluctant to go see it because of the trailer. It made it seem like a movie that was clowning on him the entire time. And I'm like, that's the last thing I want to see is another movie where they're just making fun of the concept and making fun of the main character the whole show. So I'm glad to hear that that is not the case.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
a lot of that stuff in the trailers from the beginning of the film, where they are setting up the main character and his, the romance with the director, and there is a little bit of you know, weird dialogue that's part of that. And once you get past that, once you get to the point where the action actually begins, it's just fun.
so the movie um Ryan Gosling seems to mostly pick really good movies to uh he seems to pick really good material. Um he uh he was in Drive, which was a great movie. I'm gonna have to go to IMDb, aren't I? Unless you already did.
I haven't yet.
Oh, you're letting me down. You're letting the side down. No, I have the IMDb page for Smoking the Bandit up. I'm already ready. I was on top of it. Um, but the only
He,
two
he
movies of his that I really, you know, can think of not really being interested in are Barbie and La La Land. Um, and I'm not even sure about La La Land. I have no idea, and I don't know enough about it to know if I would like it or not. Um,
and he famously stole the show in Barbie.
yeah. Um, but yeah, he seems to pick really good material. The Nice Guys was a great movie. And he's been in a lot of movies that I've never seen. Drive was phenomenal. I really liked Drive. Um, he was in The Notebook. And I've heard The Notebook is a great movie, but it's so precisely and exactly the kind of movie that is not for me, not because it's a bad movie, but because it's entirely a romantic movie about two nice kids meeting and having problems and, you know, working them. It's not for me. It's not even a bad movie, but it seems like he's got a good nose for at least solid material, even if it's material that doesn't do really well commercially. Like First Man, I've heard good things about, even though I never saw it, and it didn't seem to do real well. And that was 6 years ago. The Gray Man, again, heard good things about it. I haven't seen. I should watch more Ryan Gosling, I guess is what I'm saying. Um, have you seen The Nice Guys?
No, I haven't.
It came out 8 years ago. Man, I didn't realize that. It's dark in some places, but uh, it was a really, really well done movie. It's got Russell Crowe in it. Um, yeah, it was a very compelling movie. Um, really interesting. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of the movies he's been in, and I've just never watched them.
Wild.
Maybe I should redress. Maybe I should redress that gap in my. See, there's enough big gaps in movies I haven't seen that are older, even recent movies, let alone movies from the 80s and 70s and 90s, that I don't have to watch modern garbage. I can just watch old stuff if modern people aren't producing good things.
Here's
And
another one. Here's another one for you. An old one, Murder by Numbers, 2002. It's a it's a bit of a it is a bit of a paint by numbers murder mystery with a very young Ryan Gosling in it. Worth a look. Put that on your list too.
Murdered by Numbers. You saw it? It was good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, Not good like The Fall Guy, but it was good.
So anyway, the movie I chose to kind of pair the Fall Guy with is to make sort of a theme for today's show was Smokey and the Bandit, um, which is a classic that came out when I was too young. I was so young when this movie came out, and most people. This movie came out in 1977. Okay, I should get specific. Um, and it's got Burt Reynolds. It has got Jackie Gleason, and it's got Sally Fields in it, and it's got some other people you probably recognize, but those are the only ones who matter because those are the three main characters. Um, and it is 70s as all heck. The 70s were a fabulous time to be a trucker because that was the time when truckers were considered like sexy. You had Every Which Way But Loose and Every Which Way You Can. You had Convoy, you had Smokey and the Bandit. CB radios and truckers and trucking and all of that were like briefly a big thing during part of the 70s. So um, this movie, Smokey and the Bandit, which I had no idea what it was about, except Burt Reynolds is in a Trans Am and he's, you know, has beef with the sheriff, and Sally Fields is also there. That's all I knew about the movie. So I'm going to describe it to you so you can go into the movie knowing a little bit more. Apparently, at this point in time, it's illegal to drive Coors beer from Texas across the Mississippi into Georgia. Don't know why? Some laws or something at the time. So these two rich numbnuts are hiring truckers to bootleg, that is, to drive big rigs full of 400 cases of Coors from Texarkana to Atlanta in less than 28 hours. And basically, it's a bet. If the truckers make it, they get like $80,000, which is enough to buy your own big rig, to own it, not just, drive it for a company. And the movie opens with a guy getting busted trying to do this. And so they decide to go, and they mention that several truckers have been suckered into trying to do this in 28 hours. It's a 900-mile journey both ways to get in 28 hours. Several truckers have been suckered into trying to do this to get the money, and they've all been busted by the cops and thrown in jail because it's illegal. So they decide to go and get someone who's basically, stunt driving big rigs in a big rig rodeo at the time. Burt Reynolds' character, whose name is Bandit. And he is at this point in time making $25 a day in this rodeo. And so the thought of making $80,000 in 2 days is really enticing. So he goes and gets his friend, Jerry Reed, named Cletus, with a D, not a T. So it's totally not a Southern stereotype. And Cletus is going to drive the big rig, and Bandit, who is Burt Reynolds' character, is going to be the bait. And it's his job to drive the Trans Am fast in front of the big rig so that the cops will pull him over, and the big rig can also drive fast, but the police won't bother him. Smokey is slang for policeman. They also use bears and several other things because it's like CB, citizen band radio lingo. Breaker breaker coming at you. Rolling double nickels down the I-45 heading towards Junction.
You're good at that.
I grew up in the 70s, man. So I have to reach back into my rolling double nickels, by the way, is actually real CB slang. It means you're driving 55. You're following the speed limit. Because the nationwide speed limit back then was 55 miles an hour, if you can imagine. No wonder people were throwing riots and burning things down and breaking the law during the 70s. I mean, the thought of having to drive 55 miles an hour across Wyoming would drive you crazy. You'd be insane at the end of that trip. Or Oklahoma, Kansas. Anyways, so that's the setup for the movie. And then the entire movie, from beginning to end, is a car chase. That's it. And all the things that happen on this big car chase.
That's it.
It's awesome.
If it doesn't sound awesome, well, guess what? It is. It's awesome.
It's so great.
It is great because I mean Burt Reynolds is a total cad, and they have the weird subplot with Sally Field. He picks up Sally Field basically just as a hitchhiker,
Yeah.
and so she's just there for the rest of the film. But she provides plenty of comic relief and someone for him to play off of besides the people on the radio. And then Jackie Gleason as the police, who's trying his hardest to catch them before they cross state lines.
He literally chases them from Texas to Georgia. He chases them for 900 miles. And it's hilarious. It is. You can see, if you've seen movies from the 80s, comedy movies, so many of them drew inspiration from this film. You can see now that I go back and watch it, it's like, it's not that they copied it. It's not as heavily copied as Die Hard was. It's not photocopied, but you can see like common elements coming from this movie. So you've seen it. You've seen Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah, mentioned it on the show a few months back.
Oh.
Saw it for the first time last year.
Oh,
so
okay.
Good. Hilarious with the Burt Reynolds in an absolutely insane fourth wall break just looks straight at the camera and smiles and then drives
Awesome.
off.
Oh,
How they got away with that? How did they get away with that? You had to be there.
just one moment. He's driving away from a policeman who's led away from the road. And then he drives across somebody's lawn and hides behind a house. He parks his car behind a house to hide from this deputy who drives past him, lights wailing, and then he turns and looks right at the camera and smiles at the audience and then drives off. And that's it. It's the only fourth wall break in the entire movie, but it was great. Uh, um, and it is just a fun movie, start to stop. They've got a lot of great characters in there. The they've got a lot of fun policeman characters in there. The one sheriff, the the black sheriff, who's just all all business. He's just straight business, trying to talk Buford T. Justice. Buford T. Justice is Jackie Gleason's character. That's his name. Trying to talk him and say, "Look, you're way out of jurisdiction here. We're going to take care of this." He's just a hilarious character. Jackie Gleason has his son, who's apparently a deputy with him along for the ride, and he just craps on his son the entire trip.
Oh, and
Um,
it's hilarious.
it's so funny. And Jackie Gleason is hamming it up. He's just been given this role where the director is like, more ham, more ham. And he knocks it out of the park. Even the two guys who play the two cowboys who set up the bet, the dad who's this huge, like they say he's like 6'6", several hundred pounds, and the son who's like 5 foot nothing. He's this midget, and they're both in matching cowboy suits, and they're just betting. Uh, they're literally betting like $500 to see if Bandit's going to make the trip. And it's they've got colorful characters, they've got great situations, and you'd think you'd get tired of him driving, jumping off of things, or driving through back roads. I have no idea if this came out before or after the Dukes of Hazzard, but if someone had said to me that they looked at this show and decided to make the Dukes of Hazzard because they thought an entire TV show could be made from this, it would not surprise me, because the Dukes of Hazzard is almost Smokey and the Bandit, the TV show. Um,
Oh yeah, for sure.
1979 to 1985, the Dukes of Hazzard TV show. So 5 years later. Um, yeah, this is like the archetype for the Dukes of Hazzard. And you just never get sick of the stuff going on. There's enough things that are going on. They even get a bar fight with some bikers in, which is absolutely so 70s. It's just great. I had the time of my life for 2 hours. I was just laughing and kicking back and enjoying the movie. And Sally Fields does a phenomenal job in her role. And I thought it was just well done, top to bottom. And Burt Reynolds just plays the cat so perfectly. There's a person whose movies I've not seen as many Burt Reynolds movies as I should have. So, but yeah, it was it was absolutely, and this is from also from the time where either they were making movies from country music songs, or they were making country music songs exactly based on the plots of the movies. And Simon Hogwood quoted the lyrics in the chat because they're thirsty in Atlanta, but there's beers in Texarkana. They have a theme song that they play, I think, twice in the movie, and it's a great song. It's a fun song.
When your film gets its own theme song, and not like I think you know. I think you know what we mean.
Um, but it's so much fun. If you haven't seen Smoking the Bandit, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Um, it's just put down your burdens, watch it for a couple of hours, sit back and enjoy everybody on screen doing their damnedest to entertain you and nothing else. Um, and it's just it just lightened my spirits. It just made me feel so much better. Um, really, really great, uh, really, really great entertainment so far. Oh, sorry, 1977 and 1979. Did I say 75? That was wrong because I said the right year at the beginning. Yeah, 2 years later. So it would not surprise me if someone looked at Smoking the Bandit and said, we should make a TV show that's just like that. Two country boys who bootleg, you know, who make moonshine up in the hills and they drive around with the cops chasing them. And there's a big, no nonsense black sheriff across the border. And there's just a bunch of jumping off bridges and car wrecks. And then they made you know, colorful characters around the town. And they have a Daisy Duke and Uncle Jesse tossed in. I mean, they made their own characters. The Dukes of Hazzard did not copy this show, but if it had inspired, and they even got their own awesome country music theme song. The Dukes of Hazzard theme song is awesome. The Good Old Boys. So if it had inspired it, I'm not saying it did, and I'm not saying it's a copy of Smokey and the Bandit, but if it had inspired that, it would not surprise me. So yeah, cannot recommend. Also, I cannot recommend Dukes of Hazzard highly enough. It's a fun show. You should watch it.
You know,
That's
that's one
it.
I've never seen. Then again, I didn't see Smokey and the Bandit until last year anyway,
Yeah.
either.
So I don't know. I literally can't say anything else about the show. It was fun top to bottom. They had a ton of stunts. The stunts were great. The chase scenes were awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, really entertaining. It's refreshing to actually get entertained for once. I think we're done, DW. Closing on an hour here.
Yeah. I literally have nothing else to say. I came on the show. I emptied my brain, and that's it.
Well, I do have something more to say, and that is it was great talking to you about good movies, and a lot of fun hanging out with people in the chat. Macho Mandolph, good to see you. Simon Hogwood, Bradford Walker, everybody else. I hope you had a great time. And everybody who listened later, go to the movies. Take your sweetheart to go see The Fall Guy. You'll have fun. And if
I
you
think
don't like it, come tell me on Twitter. I'll ignore you.
I also want to welcome Russell Flowers. I don't know if this is the first time he's popped up in chat. All the way up at the top. So welcome to the show. This is my turn, isn't it?
Sure is.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this better than I did the intro to the show.
I know you can do it. I believe in you.
I believe in me too. I'm awesome. Dang it. Folks, we want to remind you to go ahead and check out the blog www.geek-gab.com. We do a bunch of, or I have done a bunch of good posts that deal with the same stuff we talk on the show, and things we don't get to, like we mentioned at the beginning. So occasionally they will expand on material or have new material or just cover things that we don't have time to cover on the show. So go check those out. Um, and check out our Patreon and our Subscribe Star. Please consider donating right now, $5 a month. Not that much money would be tremendously helpful for all of us here on the show. It's just a click away, and it is only $5. Please consider dropping in. Also, feel free to click on the like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon in order to get notifications for when we go live. Folks, this is Geek Gab for Monday, May 6th, 2024. We are here just about every week, just about the same time at 10 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on youtube.com/geekgab. That's youtube.com/geekgab. Or you can get us on the Google Play Store, on soundcloud.com, or on the iTunes Store. Download us on the device of your choice on your computer, or just listen to us on the web. We are here for you on the medium of your choosing. We want to thank everyone who tuned in and participated in our chat that was jumping, jiving, and wheeling today. And we want to thank everyone who will tune in later. We are signing out for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.